For the past few decades, fantasy football has been a mainstay in American culture. Everywhere you look, fantasy football leagues are being played by all sorts of people. Teachers, businessmen, and even pastors have been known to run their own fantasy football leagues. Studies have shown that fantasy football leagues generally increase morale and productivity in the workplace, and many employers encourage their employees to run their own casual leagues. Of course, not all leagues are quite as casual. Many groups of friends will come together to run their own league and compete for money, or more importantly, bragging rights. So fantasy football offers this great opportunity for friends to really get together and have a good time. As Mike Donnelly likes to say, fantasy football is about friendship just as much as it is about football. So some of you may be wondering, how can I run my own league and have it be fun and successful? Well, there are three main issues that every league owner needs to understand. They need to understand how to set up their league, they need to understand how to set up their draft, and they need to understand how to manage problems. If you can manage these three things, your league can be as fun and successful as some of the more popular ones out there. So the first thing you need to determine is who you want to participate in your league. Some people just don't want to participate in fantasy football leagues, and you should not force them to do it. Nobody will have fun if a team goes unmanaged for the entire year. Fantasy football only requires about a half an hour of work per week, but some people don't want to put in that time, so don't make them. You also need to determine how many teams you want in your league. Too many teams can result in some problems. Teams will be filled with people that no fan has ever heard of, and teams cannot improve via the waiver wire. The ideal amount of teams is 10 to 12, but fewer can work, but it presents some problems as well. As Bleacher Report says, 8 teams can work, but then you run the risk of having a waiver wire with so much depth that shrewd drafting becomes a moot point. After you've determined how many teams you want to have in your league, you have to determine the scoring format of your league. Sites such as ESPN and Yahoo have their own standard scoring, and those work well for the more casual leagues, but the more intense leagues may want to make their own scoring system. When you're considering this, you have to remember to not make it too complicated. If every team has to worry about drafting 3 cornerbacks, even the most passionate fans will start to lose interest. Another thing you might want to consider is keepers in your league, but you have to remember that keepers lose their charm after about 1 year. In general, you need to gauge the interest of your league in order to determine these things. If your league wants to keep it simple, then you should just keep it simple. The next thing you should consider is the draft day. Any passionate football fan knows that this is the most important day of the fantasy football season. As Matthew Berry puts it, draft day is not just the best day of the year, it is the only day of the year. So draft day offers the first insight into your team. You get to see what players you're going to be rooting for all year. You get to see your hopes renewed every single year. Or you can see your hopes crushed before the season even begins. All these things you have to consider when putting together your draft. It is tough to get 10 to 12 adults all together at once, so you need to make sure to contact the people in your league about a month beforehand, so everybody can mark that date on their calendar and be ready to go. Online drafting works for the most casual leagues. Sites like ESPN provide good formats to run your draft in. They provide tools, and they provide a way to auto draft if some people don't show up. But for close friends, draft day can serve an entirely different purpose. A close group of friends can get together for a weekend of fun, go golfing or go see a game, and it can really bring your friends together and remind you why you're playing fantasy football in the first place, to have some fun and bring your friends closer together. A complication that every fantasy football league will experience is complaints. People like to complain about scoring or how the waiver wire works, and it can be really tough for the commissioner, because the most important thing that you want to get out of your fantasy football league is a lot of fun and connectivity among the people who are playing. As Samir Khalaf puts it, fantasy football with friends is supposed to be fun, so you need to make sure that is the focus. If people are complaining too much about random things, the league can start to dissolve and fall apart, and that's no fun for anybody. The most common complaint you're going to see is unmanaged teams. So in order to make sure that this is kept to a minimum, a good suggestion is to put in a small pool of money for each year. This can be something as small as $10, and it just keeps everybody focused on the league and make sure they manage their teams year in and year out. And it makes sure that no team really goes unmanaged for too terribly long. But you also need to gauge your league's personality, see if this type of thing is right for you, see if everybody wants to do that. If they don't force them. Other problems will always arise again, but what you really need to do is talk with all the members of your league, make sure everybody's on the same page, and come to a joint resolution. Set apart some time to talk with everybody about big issues, perhaps right before the draft. And above all, make sure everybody's enjoying the league. Don't make it too much about politics. So overall, running a fantasy football league might seem simple from the outside, but when you really get into it, there are some complexities that you need to be aware of. So you need to understand, again, how to set up your league, run your draft, and handle problems. Fantasy football can be powerful. It can bring people together, tear them apart. I've seen groups that have run for 20 years or more, and people in the leagues would not be as close together as if there was no fantasy football at all. Fantasy football can really bring together coworkers, friends, and family for a great time and can be a whole lot of fun. Thank you.